Okay, so hi everyone. Welcome to our 15th video session at Impaction. Impaction, Impact plus Action is a community where we can discuss ideas that create a positive impact in the world around us. We know that not everyone can quit their jobs and start a business from scratch, even though the world tends to reward the social entrepreneurs who can. But we believe in incremental change, where we can learn from each other, distribute resources in ways that contribute to the positive social good. So that's why we have these bi-weekly video sessions where we can discuss, grow, and essentially learn from each other in ways that give us inspiration for what we can accomplish for this upcoming week and hopefully for longer durations of time. So essentially, I'm going to go around and ask everyone to introduce themselves in 2 sentences or less, and then we can just jump into this topic for today. So I'm going to start with myself. I'm Shivani. I'm one of the co-founders of Impaction, and I'm a grant and budget analyst at Chicago Public Schools. Sukanya, do you want to go next?
Hello, hi everyone. I'm Sukana. I'm one of the co-founders of Impaction. I'm a recent graduate from New York Institute of Technology, and I majored in Human Resource Management and Labor Relations. Meghna, you want to go next?
Sure. I'm Meghna. I am the UX designer for Impaction, and I'm based in Des Moines, Iowa. Tanvi, do you want to take it away?
Sure. Hi everyone, I'm Tanvi. I am the product manager with Impaction and I'm based in Boston. Maribel, how about you?
Sure. My name is Maribel. I'm based in Washington, D.C., but proud to be a Brooklynite. And I am an interdisciplinarian, so I teach social entrepreneurship sometimes. I guess educate, which is another way to say a substitute. And I'm also fight for immigrants. The narrative by showing the positive value they bring.
Awesome, thank you. Ilona, do you want to go next? You are on mute, hold on. Yeah. No, you're still on mute.
There we go, second time lucky.
There we go.
Hi, my name is Ilona and I'm a PhD student in the United Kingdom. And yeah, I work with kind of anthropology and biology and bringing together traditional knowledge and other knowledge systems. Those are all quite interesting to me as well with education.
Awesome, thank you. Simon, how about you?
Hello everyone, I'm also a PhD student based in New York City. I've done some teaching in the past at the high school and college levels, and I'll be teaching again next year.
Great. Jessica.
Hello. I am a current Master's of Education student in Chicago, and I'm also a current student teacher in a high school and a Chicago public school.
Awesome. And then, who do we have? Am I missing anyone? I don't think so. And what am I missing?
Shivani, this is Laurie.
Laurie, there we go.
Hey.
I don't know why you're not popping up. Okay, there we go.
Yeah, I'm Laurie Gregory in Oklahoma City. I serve a few roles in education, all of which are a bit non-traditional now, though I started as a state licensed teacher. So now I'm a nature connection mentor with an outdoor youth program called Wildernudge, a play educator with Tinkergarten, and a certified parent educator through the Positive Discipline Association.
Wow, very nice. Thank you. And then I think Roger, it remains.
I'm Roger. I'm founder of IdeaTrack, which works with early stage founders to get their companies rolling. I have neither the discipline nor emotional capacity to be a teacher, so I'm glad to find out how I can help from the wings.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. And yeah, I think we're just going to get started with the discussion. So today we are going to be talking about innovations that promote quality education around the world. So there are a variety of stakeholders on this call, namely teachers, parents, and supporters. And the objective of this call is to brainstorm ways that people, especially without educational expertise, can help promote and support the educators working to provide education around the world. The teachers, hopefully, we really want to learn from you. So hopefully they'll share their experiences, their challenges, and even offer advice on how innovators can help support them in one shape or form in our daily lives. So please, I'm just going to do a quick poll. Please raise your hand if you are a teacher. Okay, cool. And then I know there are a couple of people that haven't turned their videos on. That's fine. And then please raise your hand if you are a parent. I know Ilona is a parent. And then, yep, I think that's it. Okay, cool. And then please raise your hand if you're a supporter. Awesome. Cool. All right, so we're just going to be kicking off with this first question, just to test the waters a little bit. But why do you think education is important to you and the world in general?
I can start off with that if everyone's okay. Yeah. Well, I think all of you will agree that education is the most powerful solution to uplift people out of the poverty cycle and to empower people to be independent, to have better lives for themselves, their families, and their communities. And not just that, I think education does broaden your horizons. You become a learner for life, and the best kind of education is also the one that teaches you how to be a learner and keep on learning, so that basically it keeps you in an advantage at all times. And I think that is something which needs to be a basic necessity, just like food or water, for everyone around the world.
And anyone can go. I'm going to ask
Okay.
Maribel. Yeah, go ahead. Or Roger.
Maribel, you want? No, I'll say something just real quick. I know the question sounds almost odd. It's like, who would possibly disagree with that in our pro-education bubble? But anti-education has been going on for a long time, all throughout the 20th century in a variety of countries, and it's had a lot of negative impact. And it does seem like we're at a point where we actually have to make the argument rather than just kind of puffing it up for each other, like, oh yeah, it's so much fun to learn, it's so much fun to do this. I almost feel like we do have to get really serious about making the argument for education, given what's happening. So I'm just going to say that, and let's throw.
One really good point that people have kind of been raising so far as well is it's really important to think what we mean by education, because it's one thing teaching people really important tools like, reading and writing, and then that can eventually go into like shoehorning people through exams and giving them letters after their names. But there's also other really important aspects of education where people learn skills to learn and learn to kind of have these life skills and value systems and everything like that. So I think it's also, it's important to think what exactly we mean when we say education, that it's not just like academic tools, but it's tools to do life.
Yeah, I think you raised a really good point, because when we think about education, we think about the like the traditional classroom setting. But then there are also education outside the classroom, right? Like parents are a huge part of like being able to instill the need for curiosity in education. And when we when we dilute it down to what education is really about, it's about promoting curiosity. It's about being rational. It's about like learning these specific value systems that can help ensure sustainability for future generations. So in what ways are we doing that? Is it through training opportunities? Is it through only classroom settings? Is it opportunities outside of the classroom, volunteering opportunities, things that maybe not everyone has access to? If anyone has any last thoughts, please do share, and then I can move on to the next question.
Sure,
I do
I'll
mostly
start
work
with-
in. Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead, Laurie.
All right.
Oh.
Okay, you go, Lauren. You go, Lauren.
I work mostly in non-traditional education, and so I do work with kids outside and families in outdoor settings with nature connection. So I still have some of the similar goals, but they're much less academic. Like some of you are saying, the goals in the kind of education that I work in are largely those social skill development, creativity, problem solving, the kind of skills that really are going to be the foundation of a healthy adult, but we also want to look at a healthy child now. And so again, social and kind of mental development and that kind of thing being kind of the focus of the education that I see working in. But over time, we've always had these mentors or elders in our communities that were an important part of developing a healthy person. You didn't just have your one teacher that you see all the time or your one parent, you have other elders. So to me, no matter how it looks, as far as is it a classroom setting, is it outdoors, is it non-traditional, doesn't even look like a school at all, it's all education when you have people who, even if they know one day more knowledge than you do, whether it's reading or tree identification or having a healthy, self, it's all.
And one thing I do want to welcome the newest person who joined. Her name is Nandita Developoli. And Nandita, if you want to introduce yourself really quickly.
I'm Nandita Developoli. I work at a Chicago public school in Rogers Park, and I'm a middle school math teacher, 6th, 7th, and 8th grade.
Thank you. Yeah. So we were just talking about why education is important. We're just hopping into that. But right now we were talking about non-traditional and traditional settings, just to show how that's supporting like children's development overall. But yeah, thank you. Cool. Thank you, Lorianne. And then Roger, you had something to say as well.
Yeah, no, I just wanted to. So there's a sense in which education has taken on a kind of social status beyond what people actually learn. So we end up with all these people out there who are like, "Oh, I'm educated. I went to this school or whatever." But then you just watch them reason as in the most pathetic ways out in the world. And so one thing I've been wondering, and maybe the educators can help with this, and maybe we'll get to it later in the conversation, but how are we kind of pitching education to young people? Because it seems like a lot of times we're like, oh, you've got to get into like the top school so that you can have it on a resume, so you can have the social status, so you can get there. And how much is it about that kind of character development, rationality that Shivani was talking about? And I'm just wondering if there's a discussion in the teaching academic community about how education itself is sold to the young people coming through the system. Maybe I'll try to rephrase. When you're talking with students in one-on-one sessions or even in the group, does it ever come up? Does the question Shivani asked ever come up? Like I said, it almost sounds obvious to us all, but at the same time, with all the different ways that people can be educated in different settings and different ways that we've been talking about, is the discussion happening with them? Like, why? What's the point of doing this? Does that ever come up? Do kids ever ask that?
I have a student that actually asks me that all the time. Like, why are we doing this? So I follow a curriculum called Go Math, and I am a first-year teacher at the school in general. And they haven't had a proper math teacher in 2 years. So they don't have any value for math. And when I teach math, they always ask me, why do we need to do this? So I usually, right before I start a lesson, I find a video they can relate back to. Something either like, for example, area, like understanding. I watched this video about a person who wanted a fence for their dog. So they wanted to find the perimeter and then find the area, make sure it's big enough situation. So I kind of do that. I hope I answered your question, if that was what we were going towards.
I was going towards. I mean, that's interesting that the one that the kids are asking it. I mean, I guess it's not surprising kids are asking it, but yeah, I guess, yeah, if you can find other external methods to validate the process rather than relying on you. But I'm going to stop thinking. All right, Shawana, you take over.
I think Maribel has something to say. You're on mute. Still on mute. Why don't you exit and then rejoin the group? Okay. All right. Lorianne or Ilona, either of you, if you have an answer for this.
I will say that this is kind of how what brings me to more of a non-traditional setting for education. So I do mostly project-based learning, and we start with the why. We start with a problem for them to solve. We've done everything from hiking out into a park, and then I tell them, hey, I'm going to pretend I just lost my memory and have no idea how to get you guys back to your parents. What are we going to do? And so all the little things we did as we went along with the compass, with directions, with landmarks, tree identification, all these little things now have a purpose for them, a meaningful purpose. With much older kids, you can take it to the next level and really pretend that you're lost. And oh my gosh, guys, like, does anyone have any clue how to get us out of here? The students of my program choose the projects that we're going to be doing. And so, especially after the first couple of weeks where I'm kind of getting them prepared to be able to do that. And so the other things, a lot of people call this style of education invisible schooling. John Young from Wilderness Awareness School wrote Coyote's Guide, and it's a lot about how cultures all around the world have always had ways of educating their young, but it might have started with, okay, we need to eat, what do you do? And so children begin to learn science from which things are safe and which things are not, and they learn directions and they learn math of figuring out, okay, we usually travel this far, we can do this or that, and everything sort of comes into play when there is a meaning to it. And I agree with whoever it was talking about your math class. I remember the only day I remember from math class in high school was the day our teacher came in and told us that the school had approved a really fancy box window deck balcony kind of thing if we could design it. And so it was geometry, and we had to figure out everything that was involved in having that end result of a design that we could hand someone to build. And so I think that's why experiential education is really big right now, because there's so much interest in meaningful work, meaningful projects. School gardens are really big right now, which are amazing for so many different things. There's just a lot of math there with figuring out how much space each plant needs and how many plants we can get in and all of these things. And then at the same time, you're kind of bought into the experience, not only because of the rewards of the strawberries you're going to eat, but because you got your hands dirty and you did this work and it looks beautiful. And so, yeah, there's a lot there.
So what are some of the challenges that we see when we are trying to promote quality education? What are some of the challenges that teachers face, and maybe even the supporters in this space? Nandi, you're on mute.
Okay, how about now? Better? So my school is actually transferring to personalized learning, and we don't have as much structure in our school because our school is known as an opportunity school. So we are trying to build that structure as a group of teachers. Something that really does provide a challenge is the fact that our students can't handle certain things because the minute something new happens, they just want to, boom, just do everything they want to do. And sometimes it's inappropriate. Sometimes it's just the concept of being in a small group to learn or doing stations doesn't always work for my students. So there's a lot of challenges with that they are unaware of how to handle certain situations. We are trying to give seating that is more comfortable for our students, whether it be standing desks or beanbag chairs, but they abuse those situations because they're not aware of what's the proper etiquette, I guess, to handle these situations.
Simon, the question that we asked is, what are some of the challenges that teachers face, that teachers and even supporters face when promoting quality education?
I can definitely say something about that. So being a PhD student, one of my requirements is that I have to teach for at least 3 years at the undergrad level, and it's kind of unfortunate sometimes because they try and make it as easy as possible for us because we have our own coursework, but at the same time, it's like we're given very little kind of like pedagogical and educational freedom. It's like we're given a syllabus, we're given a book, we're given tests, and I just wish sometimes we could work outside of that framework. But because it's a required class, they kind of just want us to like put the students to the class, and that's it. Like, so yeah, that's definitely a challenge for me.
I can speak to
Yes,
I'm
yeah.
also in Chicago Public School for student teaching, and they just became a personalized learning school, which has been awesome because they are promoting student choice to take more autonomy into their own learning, which has been great. But like someone said, a lot of these students struggle with a lot of executive functioning skills. Like they don't know how to keep their stuff organized, like as many papers I can give them every single day, like it's just going to be gone like the day after. So even though we're giving them all the resources and materials for them to succeed, they still need to build more capacity in terms of like how to organize themselves, how to like develop social emotional skills like empathy. Like this class that I'm working with this week, we went to the Holocaust Museum, and a lot of them, it just kind of went over their heads because it doesn't directly affect their life. So helping them especially build those social emotional skills and how that can impact them and other people has been really like a challenge to hit home for them.
So if I could listen into a bunch of that and following up on just a little bit on Shivani's question and addressing sort of, so when you run into these challenges and like let's say you had a solution or you had something you wanted to do, like in Simon's case, like if you wanted to try to teach something else, or you're dealing with students who have these issues and you come up with a way to address them, I imagine you're telling somebody like, hey, I've got a way to solve this problem, and then somebody's saying no to you. And I guess I'm curious, who is that person saying no? And is there a way to get over and through them, or is the institutional system just kind of too dense? I mean, who's the person putting the kibosh on the ideas?
So a lot of time it's the chair of the department. I'm lucky in my case that like if I want to teach something else, if I want to talk about something else, like I'm going to do it. I'm not going to ask anyone. But there are a lot of other students or PhD students that work with me that are like very hesitant to do anything new, and they're kind of like very afraid of the administration. But yeah, a lot of time it's either the chair. Yeah, that'll say yes or no. And then, sorry, go ahead. Oh,
go ahead.
You didn't say anything. Yeah. And it's difficult because like, the chair is almost always a tenured professor, and as PhD students, we're like the lowest of the lows. So it's like hard to, kind of like bridge that gap sometimes as well. Yeah.
Roger, can I touch on that point? Sometimes it's chair or person in charge administrator, but in my experience, many times it's been not any particular person, although administration can help or hinder any innovation. Sometimes it's like a culture, a group of people that don't understand maybe the importance of building the time and the space for maybe some of the social and emotional learning throughout the day. Sometimes it's just things like you wanting to incorporate what students learn in a lesson, let's say something as simple as recycling or empathy, wanting to incorporate it in the daily habits of students and not knowing how. So even if there's a culture of understanding, there might not be, but then there's a culture of not knowing how to incorporate it in a daily routine. So going in and out of different schools, it feels like it's just a large body of people, and you have to sort of find similar people that are on the same page about what we're trying to do, what learning means, and whether we're on aligned in that way to build smaller projects. So sometimes it's just a group of people that understand one thing may not understand another thing. So I don't know if that makes sense, but it doesn't feel like it's any one person in my experience.
I think you're right. I think maybe some of those CPS people might. I'm on the admin side for CPS, namely the grants and budget side, and I completely agree with the CPS teachers on here, especially when they're talking about how there's potentially a lack of freedom and innovation, especially maybe even in like the higher needs schools. They have grant programs like Title I that helps disadvantaged schools or students coming from disadvantaged communities. Title II that helps with like teacher quality, and then with enforcing teacher quality, and then Title IV that is based off of like well-rounded education. So more of these like social, emotional learning components, all of that's funded through these 3 grants. And for these 3 grants, the Illinois State Board of Education has specific requirements that the schools, teachers, students have to fulfill in order to get more funding for these programs. And the more funding that they get, the more they have to keep doing to show continuous improvement. So then when you're in that cycle keeps going round and round and round, and there's no room for innovation or freedom, especially for the teachers, which makes it 10 times harder to, like, especially if funding is like the foundation for all of your activities, it makes it so much harder to be like to tap into your creativity as an educator. It's like you're perpetuating that cycle. So on the admin side of things, I do agree that like I don't think that, like Maribel said, maybe it's the culture behind it. There are, I think a couple of people said that the problem is with the admin, and I think honestly you're right. I will point at myself and say that is correct.
I was going to say, it's you!
It's you!
Can I adjust the question just a little bit then? If it's so hard internally, and it sounds like it's almost impossible internally to make something happen unless you've built like a massive coalition. So, the other option is to start reaching out to external bodies, the rest of the community, us in the innovation side. And then just to tie this back to the entire thing, in what ways can those of us who are out here, we've got our own challenges, getting funding and all this stuff, although I think I've solved that. But what kind of things can we deliver to you all, whether it's from a messaging standpoint or, actual things or whatever, that would be helpful? Maybe there's nothing that we can do, but where are you finding you just don't have the time? I reach out to schools quite often, and usually the response is, we just don't have the time. We just don't have the time. And usually that's shorthand for a much bigger answer, like what we're talking about right now. But in what ways, I guess I'm asking, what ways can we sell to you better? But really, what ways can we be more supportive so that we can get some of your ideas that you're finding internally, and then get them to go somewhere, whether it's more external or working through the system, up through the system, whatever it takes to get your ideas from the ground to the world.
I also think that Nandi was saying something as well when it came to CPS. Yeah.
Something I guess this might tie in, I'm not too sure exactly, but I think a way on how to be a leader in CPS maybe. I think that maybe my administration, there's a lot of pressure being an opportunity school. There's a lot of pressure from the network and CPS that, you finally, like, you need to build up your NWA scores, you need to make sure perfect attendance, things like that, like all of the CPS factors. I think something that maybe my administration could actually need some assistance with probably would be just the way on how to be a leader, I guess. When we give up ideas just because they aren't her ideas, how you can handle it, how you can build that trust between the administration and the teachers. I think that's where we fall. There's always administration and teachers. Sometimes being part of the Chicago Teachers Union, we build that divide as well, like wearing red on Fridays, things like that, I guess, per se. That's like where it comes, like, we've built this relationship between us that we don't want to talk to each other either. There's a lot of miscommunication, and maybe how to become a leader is where I would like more assistance with. I believe my principal has good morals and values, but sometimes it's not translated. And it could be from the pressures from the higher ups as well.
It sounds to me like perspective taking too. Can you hear me? Still issue the sound. You can hear me. It sounds to me like perspective taking if teachers were more able to take on the perspective of administrators and students and say, okay, this is the duty of my role and I care about students in this realm. And this is actually the responsibility and the things that administrators think about. And they're worrying maybe about students in the hallway. And so when they come in and say something that doesn't seem empathetic, why might that be? What are they thinking about? And vice versa, administrators taking maybe the perspective of the teacher and the things that we're worried about that our students go through. So maybe more of that can lead, as well as more participatory approaches to the learning process. So how much can teachers have a say in curriculum development or in meetings where only administrators are allowed? And how differently would it look if both students, teachers, and administrators co-created more of the school maybe curriculum, the school environment, the way we do things. So talking about leadership within, but even from all actors within the school community. And maybe the conversation starts with how do we first create the change we want to see in the schools? And if they work, how do we move from this one school to other schools or to other cities and countries? But also, I think we can all do a lot of learning from initiatives that are already out there and have been successful. So it's a mix of, I'm an innovator and I have ideas, but also there are innovators out there that have ideas that have done this and have succeeded. So let's learn from that. But I think we need a lot of help. Teachers alone, we have a lot on our plate. And I'm not even a full-time teacher, so full-time teachers have even more on their plate. And having people that come in, innovators that come in and guest teach, like Roger did the other day. Thank you, Roger. And I think people that are willing, professionals that are willing to mentor, and volunteers that are willing to say, hey, let me look at what's out there and the problem you're experiencing today with your students and with the administrators and see where we can get inspiration and support.
I think that makes it a good segue to our third question, like as to what are teachers doing to help alleviate some of these barriers today? And I know I linked to some of our Innovation News articles, but yeah, if anyone has any ideas, please throw them out there.
Just because it ties in with some of what we've been saying, I'll mention school gardens again, because I have seen that often as like a private sector or nonprofit partnership with a school, both for just getting the supplies and the volunteers to maintain it. Maybe you have a local Master Gardeners Club who will come out and do some things with the students. They have great programs they offer for free. You just kind of have to, you know, make those connections. And so it's just something that has been so impactful in the classroom. Especially with kids who are, you know, in elementary or in science classes or whatever, but just kind of broadly that sense of satisfaction and all these skills that we were talking about that aren't necessarily tested on the assessments, which are tied to funding, which are then tied to decision making. But if it doesn't feel to the administration that this is going to be a financial, you know, takeaway from what's going on, because you do have a local garden center and a local botanist who's going to come out and be a part of that, I think that's a really amazing connection that can be made that can really impact students and teachers.
Do teachers have acts, like, is there like a message board everybody goes to, or some app that they download? It's like, hey, here are people who are available in the area who might be willing to help, or is it more just them being out there and networking if they have time to do that, and then finding somebody and then pushing them through the system? I know there's a lot of initiatives out there that go around and do talks at schools, usually pushing one or more political agendas from a variety of reasons. But are there anything ways that teachers can get access to, you know, professionals in the community and, you know, do more to convince them to come into the school? That's kind of what I'm hearing. It doesn't sound like we need any more technology to do this. Somebody mentioned leadership earlier, and that sounds more like, you know, just quality material for teachers and students to be able to have a larger discussion about what's going on. So is there a set of resources that teachers go to find, hey, I've got a kid who's interested in botany, where would I find somebody to help with that?
I see. I think there are different teacher groups in different regions locally, and maybe your teachers might not be as aware of what's out there. One of the really amazing discoveries I had when I was interning at Ashoka was that we were sort of reinventing a wheel without meaning to, and spirit of collaboration, we failed to acknowledge the teacher collaboratives that were already out there, and that really pissed them off. So I think one of the things we could be better at is acknowledging and researching who's already out there in the space that have created communities. And if we use technology, making sure that people that have been doing this for 10, 12, 20 years are a voice and are part of that. So I would say just reaching out.
I think that leads us to our actual last question. That was a good gap, a good bridge to that. But this is the big ticket question, but what are things that we can do, as in the non-educators, the supporters, to help support the educators? Maybe something that we can do even in our daily lives that can promote small amounts of change.
I feel is creating an awareness among the non-educators by creating a program where non-educators and educators can interact with each other and know about the importance of quality education and everything. And from there, you can start building different programs, understand the needs of different communities. I feel this is again like a change management program where the non-educators need to know about the importance of education and everything, and then start implementing different ideas as my perspective as a supporter.
Yeah, I think as well, like recognizing that because teachers generally do have a specific thing that they have to get completed by the end of the day, they have kind of things that they're contractually obligated to do, to realize that they're human beings and they can't do everything. So sometimes the more social side of, or like kind of building of personhood that is an important part of education can't always be done at school. So to find other ways to kind of support teachers by doing that outside of school, whether it's with children's classes or youth groups, or like the way you raise your children, or like the way you interact with children in the community and the opportunities you give them, but just to kind of see that whilst it's great if you can get that into schools, it's also not always possible. So as individuals with friends and family and as members of communities, we can still contribute to making that happen.
Yeah, I think to add on, I know some they try to utilize as much like parents and like community involvement, but that does take a lot of time for teachers to have that all planned out. And at least in the school that I am working with, I have a lot of students from like Hispanic background, African American families. Their parents are just pretty much happy that they have a decent school, but their interaction with like the actual school is not that present because they're not really sure. A lot of them are maybe immigrants from other countries. So maybe some way of finding more of like community for these families that they do have a voice role in our school would be really nice, so that we all have this kind of same vision that they can have to.
Would it be better for us to build relationships with teachers and then have the teachers promote us internally? Or should we start building relationships with administrators and then have them kind of say, hey, teachers, this is available?
Both. See, it has to be either or, but maybe there's a reason. I feel like both. Why not do both?
Well, if it came down to it that you had to choose, I mean, obviously it'd be great if we could build all of that together, but that's not always possible. So if it comes down, gotta go left or right. I guess who would be the higher likelihood to play? I know that's going to be on a case by case basis, but I'm interested in what your gut reaction to that is, either from the perspective that you have in your school, or from just your general understanding of how the process works.
I personally say teachers because there are more of us than administration, and I think someone was saying that like, oh, my other colleagues are like afraid to go up to administration, but when like all the teachers have the same vision and that they know that these resources are available and that hey, all these resources, like I also do. Sometimes administration like they find all these like cool resources and dump it to us. So then not everyone in the school is like using that resource. The rest of the teachers who do not as impactful, sometimes they're just like, well, why should I be? I think if they're like, that's really most of the teachers, because again, there's like more of us, and we're the ones directly affecting the student like lives of students. And if they can get on, if all the teachers can get on board the resources outside, they hopefully a good administration, something that all the other teachers are on board with, and I'm missing out. That's my opinion.
Yeah, yeah, go ahead. Go ahead, Mirabel.
I think I heard that it was important to have the teachers say. That was your main idea. Right? Okay, I was trying to see that was it. And I really support a bottom approach to many things. I still believe they still have both teams, but both administrators and teachers and innovators. But if you had to choose, I think being in both distant role and teacher role, when I'm on the ground with the students, the problems are more real and more at the forefront. And I feel like many times your role defines how well you remember the current problems that students are going through and facing. And teachers are there every second of the day with students. So if you had to choose, it would be teachers.
Yeah, I think we left.
Agree, which is totally fine if you say like, I think this, you know.
Yeah, I think I honestly obviously can't speak for the teachers on this case, but for admin, I think that we need to be held more accountable for like actually listening to the education space in general and understand that yes, it's bureaucratic, yes, you have to jump through a lot of loopholes, but at the end of the day, we're here to help the students and then help the educators who are helping the students. And a lot of the times that can fall through. So I think, like as Nandi said, that there needs to be a direct like communication channel between the admin and the teachers, so both channels can communicate with each other on what their needs are and how they can better work together, so a lot more schools don't fall through. Chicago had closed 40 schools before because admin closed 40 schools because they ultimately academic standards, and there were a lot of challenges with like the schools that weren't meeting up to the standards of CPS, and then they ended up closing them all, and then students, teachers didn't know where to go. It was a huge problem, and there were books written about it, and this actually happened relatively recently. So there needs to be, yeah, on the admin side, on the student, teacher, all of that, there just needs to be more communication. But yeah, that's my take on it. Okay, I'm gonna start closing up, but if anyone has any last minute thoughts on how supporters can help the teachers, we would love to hear like at least one or two more thoughts before we close up.
Shivani, you had mentioned even small things that somebody can just do in their daily life. And I was thinking about last week, I was on a field trip at an art museum, and the staff had done some growth mindset education among themselves. And so when a student was trying to, engage in the hands-on art project and would say, oh, I'm not good at drawing, someone would come over, oh, you're not good at drawing yet? Well, here, why don't you go ahead and practice that, and that this was just a person in the community, their parents, their teachers may have already said that kind of thing 100 times, but when you're out and this artist who's works at an art museum says the same thing, and having that kind of message reinforced, I felt like it was so valuable. So like parent education or just in little interactions you have with young people, if you can be a little intentional about what's being conveyed there and how you're supporting those messages.
That's a really good point, and I feel like when it comes to incremental change, maybe it starts with a change in mindset from a very early age. So I think, like, especially what you were talking about, it matters how you do communicate to kids at an early age and be a source of positive support for their growth. So that's a really good point. And I think that can be like one of our main takeaways from today's meeting. But I do know that I want to respect everyone's time, and we do have 5 minutes left in this call, and I would just love to hear your feedback after we stop recording. So I'm just going to close up and just say thank you so much for this wonderful discussion and being the teachers and like the educators in this space that you are. I think a lot of people, especially admin, needs to like pay attention to the direct impact that y'all are making. So we're here to support. So if any of you, we are a source of like positive news and examples of amazing people doing amazing things around the world. So if you would like to receive news or anything like that, please do subscribe to our newsletter or just reach out to me directly to see like what other people are doing around the world. So we can have like this knowledge sharing thing continue. And so I'm just going to ask everyone, just check out our previous video. I'm going to do like some endorsement stuff that we're still figuring out. But please check out this video by clicking on this button right here, and then subscribe to our channel by clicking this button right here. and then check out our website at impaction.com, myimpaction.com. But yeah, thank you all so much for a wonderful discussion.